Earlier on this soft chalk, you read about basic price ceilings and price floors, and you watched a pretty interesting video on how they work. And now I just want to give you a concrete example of each so that you can take it with you. So let's look at price ceilings first. Let's take, for example, an apartment in New York City, because as you saw in the video, oftentimes price ceilings, a good example of price ceilings is rent control. And they tend to have rent control in large urban areas. So let's say that the fair market price of apartments in New York City is $1,600. New York City has rent controls, which are price ceilings. So where do you think price ceilings are set? Below or above the market price? Well, counterintuitively, price ceilings are set below the equilibrium price. And the way that I like to think about it is that the price is trying to get up to the equilibrium price, but it hits the ceiling. It hits the ceiling before it can get to the market price of $1,600, which is why it is called a ceiling. So a price ceiling is the highest price that can be charged in the market. So we will say that the rent controls set by New York City are set at $1,200, meaning landlords cannot charge above this price. There it is. So this creates something interesting, and you can tell directly from the graph what happens. So what occurs is that quantity demanded right here is much larger than quantity supplied at $1,200. And that should make sense to you, right? Who doesn't want an apartment in New York City for $1,200? There's going to be demand out the door of the apartment building trying to sign up for those $1,200 apartments. But the number of landlords that are willing to actually sell their apartments for $1,200 is very limited. So quantity demanded is much bigger than quantity supplied. This creates a shortage. Anytime the quantity demand is larger than the quantity supply, there's going to be a shortage in the market. And that's the size of the shortage right there, the red box. This is the number of apartments that landlords are willing to supply. This is the number of people willing to rent apartments at this price. And the difference, and this creates a shortage, obviously. So again, just a repetition of the definition. A price ceiling is the highest price that the seller can sell the product. Now onto a price floor. What is a good example of a price floor? So I'm going to use an example of the airline industry. So in 1975, to fly from Chicago to Minneapolis, it cost $169. And to fly from Los Angeles to San Francisco, which is the same distance, it only cost $69. But the question is, why? Well, roughly the same number of people were flying between these two destinations. They were approximately the same distance. There was roughly the same number of airplanes flying. So why such a difference in the price of these airfares? What is different about these two routes? Well, one is interstate travel between states, and the other is called intrastate travel, meaning it was all inside California. And this all has to do with the way that the airline industry was regulated in the 1970s. Interstate travel was regulated by the Civil Aeronautics Board. It set the prices for flights traveling across state lines, and it set a price floor. So thinking back to when we studied price ceilings, where is the price floor set, above or below the equilibrium price? Well, if you're following from before, the price floor would be set above. Now again, it might seem counterintuitive because floors are usually not above anything, but if you're thinking about it logically, the price is trying to drop to the equilibrium price, but it hits the floor and it cannot go any lower. Why is it called a price floor? Just like I said, because it's the lowest price that can be charged by law. So, which route is the market price and which route is the price floor? Well, the market price is $69 because we've proven that with the same number of flights, the same number of passengers, we can make a profit at $69. However, the price floor is $169 for interstate travel, and it's the price charged between Chicago and Minneapolis, and there it is. So let's look at a little deeper. Whenever there's a price floor, the quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded. So let's look at that in depth. At $169, of course, the airlines love that price. They are willing to supply lots of seats at $169 because there's a profit incentive. They like making that much money. But at the higher prices, the amount of people that want to buy those seats is much lower. So when quantity supplied is greater than quantity demanded, we have a surplus in the market. And the surplus is that size right there. That's the quantity demanded of seats, quantity supplied of seats, and the difference between the two is the surplus. So what price did airlines charge customers flying from Chicago to Minneapolis? Well, we know that it's $169. And if airlines couldn't compete by price, since they all charge the same price, how did airlines compete? Well, if you think about it, if every single flight had to be $169, they had to have different ways of attracting customers. So it was all about service. Best food, bigger seats, nicest flight attendants. Look at this plane. It's slightly empty. There's going to be a surplus of seats because of that price floor. But you're going to get better food, nice flight attendants, etc. All the things that we used to see on airplanes, but we do not see them anymore. So, let's move forward in time. Deregulation hit the airline industry in 1978. What do you think happened to the price floor? So again, here's some good economic vocabulary. $169 is a regulation by the Civil Aeronautics Board. They are setting that price. So what happens when you deregulate? You take away those regulations. Well, the price floor is eliminated, which lowers the price to the market price. So let's take away that price floor. Once it disappears, this gets rid of the surplus, and people are now flying from Chicago to Minneapolis and all similar destinations for $69. People get to fly for lower prices, but the airplanes are now more crowded, as we all understand, and we get less service because they are all competing on price. So to just reiterate, the price ceiling is a maximum legal price that a seller can charge for a product. If we are looking at this, the goal is to make affordable by keeping the price from reaching the equilibrium. So there's a price ceiling, and again, you can go through this same information by analyzing that the quantity demanded is going to be bigger than the quantity supplied with a price ceiling, and that is going to create a shortage. Does this policy help consumers? Well, it keeps the price low, so yes. But it can result in black markets because there is so much demand for that product that you might develop a black market that charges slightly more. Hope this hope these examples help you further understand price floors and price ceilings.